Thank you again, Ms. Georgieva and Secretary Albright. It's now my distinct pleasure to highlight two more extraordinary individuals who've made their own mark on our global community. Good evening, everyone. I'm Roberta Braga, Deputy Director for Programs and Outreach at the Adrian Arsh Latin America Center. Today, we honor His Excellency Luis Alberto Moreno as he steps down from his remarkable 15-year career as President of the Inter-American Development Bank, as well as his more recent contributions to combating the COVID-19 crisis in Latin America. Let us now watch a brief video illustrating President Moreno's personal and professional milestones. During his tenure at the IDB and as Colombia's ambassador to the United States, President Moreno worked closely with former U.S. Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson. Together, they bolstered socioeconomic advancement and advocated for conservation across Latin America. Today, they continue to improve lives in the region by promoting sustainable and climate-resilient development, while also encouraging governments to adapt a green recovery as we re-emerge from the pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, coming to us live from Georgia, please welcome Chairman of the Paulson Institute and President Moreno's longtime friend and peer, Henry M. Paulson, Jr.
Roberta, thank you. Good evening, everyone. What a wonderful event. First, a big thank you to my good friend, John Rogers, for the invitation to participate in tonight's event. And another thank you to Fred and the Atlantic Council for all the work you're doing to strengthen the transatlantic community and craft solutions for today's global challenges. Tonight, it's my honor to introduce Luis Alberto Moreno for the Distinguished International Leadership Award. Over the course of my career, I've had the privilege of working with a number of outstanding leaders in business and government. And Luis Alberto is one of the very best. He understands business, he understands finance, he understands government, and he understands diplomacy. I met Luis Alberto some 20 years ago when he was Colombia's ambassador to the United States. Since then, I've worked with him often and seen up close and personal the traits that have made him so very successful. For one, he's a bundle of energy with a unique talent for connecting with people across cultures, national boundaries, professions, and industries. He works equally well with heads of state and CEOs, as he also does with the staff members who support them. He's results-oriented and does whatever it takes to get meaningful things done. I've always admired leaders who transform organizations. And when so many of our multilateral institutions haven't adapted to meet the needs of the modern world, the IDB is a model of effectiveness thanks to Luis Alberto. His 15-year tenure has been defined by transformational leadership. Under his watch, the IDB played a key role in Latin America's recovery from the financial crisis as he managed the largest capital increase in the IDB's history. It created a new arm to support the bank's private sector related activities. It reformed its innovation laboratory to mobilize financing, knowledge, and connections. And importantly, it became a major driver of sustainable development in the region. In short, Luis Alberto has positioned the IDB and the Latin American region as a core partner in the transatlantic community. And so I'm delighted and honored to bestow upon him the Distinguished International Leadership Award. Luis Alberto, one of the highlights of my career has been working with you to further the cause of conservation in Latin America. You are a great friend to me and many others, and a human dynamo who will continue to be a difference maker for many years to come. Congratulations on this richly deserved award.
Thank you very much, Hank, and what an honor it is to be introduced by Secretary Ponsel, a longtime friend. And Hank, it's certainly among the people that I have always had at the top of my list, as I've worked with him and learned from him during my time, not only as president of the IDB, but before that. Your achievements, both in the public and the private sectors, make you certainly one of the true leaders of our generation. I equally want to thank John Rogers and the Atlantic Council for choosing me to join this very select group tonight. Under the leadership of your president, Fred Kemp, the Atlantic Council continues to reaffirm its indispensable role in helping decision makers navigate a treacherous global landscape. Many others make that work impossible or possible, but including my good friend Adrian Ernst, who is of the art of the possible and whose vision and passion has made this a go-to source of insight on the region that is closest to my heart. I equally want to thank Jason Marsack, who's been leading the Adrian Ernst Center for Latin America and who's taking this program to new heights. Let me equally congratulate my fellow award recipients. My dear friend, Kristalina Georgieva, who's being honored in the same category as I am. As we all know, Kristalina is not only leading the IMF during the most critical junction in our lifetime, and certainly from its inception and in today's global economy, and certainly, believe me, it makes me sleep well at night, as it should others, knowing that the IMF is in her hands. And at the same time, I would also like to congratulate Lionel Richie, whose music continues to inspire people around the globe and who demonstrates what giving back looks like. I had the chance to work with Lionel and with Quincy Jones, a dear friend, on Haiti with the earthquake. But we all remember his music and how many of us just danced all night long. I have developed my entire professional life to Latin America and the Caribbean. And as Hank mentioned, I spent the last 15 years of that journey as president of the IDB, helping to create a bank with a sharper focus on the tools to chip away at entrenched economic and social challenges. We seem to have the wind to our sails a decade ago. The region had weathered the 2008 financial crisis. And for the bank's part, we had secured, as Hank mentioned, our largest capital increase. Leaving the IDB under these circumstances has been difficult, but it has been a privilege during my last 7 months to help the bank pivot, refocus, and muster all of its strength. This year, the bank intends to approve and disburse a record lending for the region's public needs, social safety nets, productivity and employment, and fiscal measures to help ensure stability. I leave the bank with pride in what we have done to set the foundations for building back better. We helped establish a digital transformation agenda in our region, and we helped nurture entrepreneurship, innovation, and the private sector across our countries. We too helped turn development into sustainable development in areas ranging from agriculture all the way to infrastructure. We also built the bank infrastructure and the human capital that has allowed the IDB to devote all of its powers to tackling the pandemic. Of course, I'm equally humbled when I consider just how much needs to be done and the thought that so many may sink back into poverty. The IDB, as Cristalina was mentioning earlier this week in the Financial Times, needs a capital increase, as does the fund. It needs a bazooka, as she mentioned. And I hope that governments support this to ramp up, among other things, the digitalization and the connectivity in our countries, and how the IDB must redouble its work on the so-called pre-existing conditions that have made our region so vulnerable, such as weak interregional supply chains, high labor informality, and gapping inequality. I always called myself an optimist, and even in these dark days, that hasn't changed, because opportunity can and must come out of this catastrophe. If my legacy has been to help and strengthen the bank, to help strengthen the region, especially as it faces these historic urgencies, then I derive a measure of satisfaction for this unforgettable chapter in my career. I equally want to thank my family and thank all for being here. This allows not only for me to have my mother and my brothers, but especially my children and my wife, who I adore, to be with us connected today. Thank you again to the Atlantic Council for this great honor.
Luis Alberto, you've done so much for so many, and there's no one that understands the Latin American region better than you. So I have a couple questions for you. First, as you look at Latin America and you look at the post-COVID recovery, what worries you the most as you look forward?
Well, Hank, we are kind of in this pandemic tunnel. We are in a moment where we have perhaps the largest amount of, as per population, the largest amount of COVID cases. But what truly worries me is the pre-existing political conditions that were there before the pandemic. The fact that even though every country is fighting to flatten the curve of the pandemic, equally true is that the amount of unemployment, of poverty that is happening as a result of this is huge. And that will come along with larger amounts of debt. So countries are going to be in a very tough circumstance. I do, however, believe that there is also opportunity. And there is opportunity coming as it did back in the 30s when the US was very focused in this hemisphere. And I hope that we can see Latin America be a larger focus in the US recovery and a way forward. And I also look at how our education levels have increased and how the digitalization has advanced significantly. I mean, when you look at the numbers of things that are happening in terms of electronic commerce, in terms of how still our democracies are resilient, and especially how the private sector, especially the younger generations, are having a set of changes of values where they are looking more and more at issues of inequality. Populism always existed in Latin America, fundamentally because of inequality. And that creates a political cleavage that creates populism of left and right. I think this is the one thing that we have to close this gap to be a more cohesive society.
Yeah, and we need to end this on an optimistic note here. And of course, you wouldn't have been doing the things you're doing. None of the leaders here today would be doing them if we weren't optimists, right? So as big as the problems are, we've always got to look at the positive side. So tell me, what's the single thing that gives you the most hope as you look forward?
Well, I think to me, the biggest source of optimism, Hank, is how the COVID essentially put a light on a lot of things that we knew were there, where we never saw them front and center. The fact that we today, more and more, both with climate change and with COVID, we gotta let science drive the discussion. So I'm really positive in the sense that it will take time, it will be not a straight line, but I truly believe that the fact that we take stock in a bigger way of what our own realities are and how we as societies cannot afford to have very few people having a lot and the many having less. This has been an endemic problem of Latin America. This is, I think, the beginning of a profound change.
You're a man of great wisdom. I sometimes wonder whether it's the energy I admire most or the wisdom, but I admire them both. And I can assure you that there are going to be a lot of people relying on you for both in the years ahead. And you've got still very big things in front of you. So again, thanks for all you've done and all you are going to do. Thank you, Luis.
And thank you to the Atlantic Council. Thank you, Hank.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to hear what's brought you hope, President Moreno, especially during this unusual and challenging time. Sir, it's been an honor working with you. Thank you for your friendship, for your partnership, and for your support of our work at the Adrian Arch Latin America Center. Your optimistic brand of leadership and your efforts to spur economic and social change will certainly be felt across the region for years to come. Nos sentimos honrados por tener una persona que ha tenido un rol tan importante en Latinoamérica. Gracias. Thank you for joining us from Florida while on a well-deserved vacation with your family.